Such a privilege to be joined by Ambassador Mike Huckabee, who is the U.S. Ambassador to the State of Israel. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for being in this wonderful country.
Well, it's a real blessing. And, you know, we actually share some common roots. I was born and spent the first part of my childhood in Arkansas. And you served as a pastor in Arkansas and governor of Arkansas. Did you ever see yourself serving in this capacity? And tell us a little bit about the formation of that love for the land of Israel.
Well, first of all, that is not an Arkansas accent. I can tell you that right now. No, I never saw this coming. But there were a lot of chapters of my life that I didn't foresee. I think that's the miracle of life. It's the beauty of life, is that it's an adventure. Yes. And one of the ways that I believe one should approach life is never think that you've figured it out. Don't ever feel like you've got it all planned as to how God is going to take your life, because you don't. And He will take you on many detours that you didn't expect, and embrace the detours, because it's the detours that sometimes become the destination. And you'll look back and realize that the detours that you resisted, hated, were the very things that led you to those moments of fulfillment. And I look at Joseph in Genesis chapter 50, after a lifetime of really being mistreated, being misunderstood. Now, there was a lot of arrogance in Joseph in his young life, but he ended up falsely imprisoned, sold off into slavery by his brothers, left for dead. I mean, this guy had a rough life, and it was all caving in on him. But ultimately, all of those detours led to his ability to save the whole nation of Israel, his family included, including the brothers that had mistreated him, left him for dead, and sold him into slavery. And when he was confronted by his brothers with a plea, please don't kill us, because they thought that he would, he said, what you intended for harm, God used for good. It's a great reminder that even when people intentionally try to hurt us, try to destroy us, step back, be patient. What was intended for harm, God can use for good.
In your time as a pastor, in your time as governor of Arkansas, what were some other moments perhaps that helped prepare you for this role?
Well, my first trip to Israel came when I was 17, between my high school graduation and entering college. And that was 1973, July. So it's been 52 years. I was enthralled with Israel from the time I first came. And I want to be very clear. In 1973, Israel wasn't much to embrace. It was a struggling country. It really was, almost third world. You go to the old city back then, there were sheep and goats and camels still running around. The Bedouins were rushing their flocks around the old city, and the market was on Friday. It was a very different Jerusalem and a very different Israel then. The economy was not on fire like it is now. You didn't have startup nation. You basically had startup motors. People were struggling in their old beat-up cars on dilapidated roads. Most people lived on kibbutzim because it was the only way they could survive. It was largely a socialist country economically, not in the sense of a Soviet socialist, but pretty much that's how people survived here. The economy was driven by selling off some Jaffa oranges and trying to lure some tourists. Very different country. But it was also a country where people had a pioneer spirit. It was uncanny. I felt like I was looking at an America from 200 years before, where people took great risk in order to create a life for their families, to create a future of security and safety, to live a dream of having their own land, and a land that was really theirs 3,800 years before.
That's amazing. Tell us a little bit about your vision for this particular role. When you got the news, how did you respond?
I was shocked, because President Trump and I had never had a conversation about my coming to Israel as ambassador. I knew that there were people who had suggested it to him, but I didn't think anything of it because, quite frankly, I was living a really good life in the private sector. I, in my mind, completed my government world, and I owned a number of businesses. I was traveling all over the world, making speeches. I hosted a television show nationwide with a studio audience in Nashville, Tennessee. It was incredible fun. making a very good living, enjoying life, surrounded by my grandchildren and family. Life was quite good. And he called out of the clear blue just a few days after the election. President Trump never asks you, he tells you. So he calls and, he said, Mike, you're going to Israel. You're going to be my ambassador there. And he didn't say, would you consider, or I'd like to appoint you. What do you think? It was, you're going.
It's the head of state giving his orders.
Yeah, it's really pretty blunt. Yeah. If he'd asked me to do anything else at all in the government, I would have said, no, sir, thank you. I'm honored, please, but I'm not interested in taking a federal job right now. Don't want the pay cut. But this was the one thing that he put before me that I knew I couldn't say no to, because I felt like that the cumulative essence of my life, over 100 trips here in the 51 years, surely had led to this being not just him saying, you're going, but for me, as I like to say, it was an Isaiah moment. Here am I, Lord, send me.
What do you plan to take into this role, and what is your vision for your tenure?
Well, it's pretty simple in that an ambassador is not coming to give his own view. He's coming to represent his country and his president. In this role, my job is to be the representative of the United States to the land of Israel, to its government, to its people, and to also be a servant to the 700,000 Americans who live in Israel, which is stunning. Most people have no idea. Every time we have members of Congress come and I tell them, you know how many Americans live here? Don't guess I do. And they guess maybe 50,000, and they think that's a big number, and I tell them 700,000. The significance of that's a full congressional district. I said Israel is the 436th congressional district, but 700,000 Americans live here. That's more than any other country on earth except Mexico. So think about that, this tiny little piece of real estate in the Middle East, 6,000 miles from Washington, D.C., is second only to Mexico in the number of Americans living abroad. More than Canada, the UK, France, Italy. Is pretty stunning. So my job is to serve those citizens who live here, as well as the ones back home, and to be the voice and the eyes and ears of the president while I'm here.
There's a great deal of concern that some people have for the shifting attitudes toward Israel in the West. Are you seeing any of that in the U.S.? Have you picked up on that in your time here as well?
Yes, and it's very disturbing because it's apparent that a lot of Americans do not understand the unique partnership between the U.S. and Israel. I say this often. We have many friends. We have many allies. We only have one partner, Israel. I don't say that because I'm here. I don't say it because it's just something that I like saying. I say it because it's the actual reality of the unusual, unique relationship that the United States has with Israel. And it has it for several reasons. Part because we share a level of intelligence gathering that most people have no idea how intense that is. It's almost seamless between the Israeli Mossad and Binshet and the CIA and the NSC of the United States. And that's out of necessity for both countries because we not only have typically the same friends, we have the same enemies. We really do. A lot of Americans don't understand that. The second thing, military hardware, we share a lot of that in a way that is unusual for two countries to intertwine. But there's something bigger than all of that, and it's that we share a common foundation. Both the United States and Israel are built on, for Israel, a Judeo-Christian or a Judean-Jewish foundation. America on a Judeo-Christian foundation. But since Christianity is built on Judaism, what you have is the very essence of Western civilization is the heart, the soul of both countries and the way they operate as a democracy, giving individuals freedom, but recognizing that our rights and basic fundamental liberties come from God, not from the government. That is a common denominator that is unlike any other with nearly 200 countries on the planet.
You say that we have the same enemies. One of those enemies, of course, is Iran. And we've seen recently escalation in the conflict that's been ongoing to some degree between Israel and Iran, with the particular preemptive strikes carried out on the nuclear facilities. You wrote a, later publicized by President Trump, very powerful text saying, you are here for such a time as this. Unpack for us what was going through your mind as you wrote that text and the prayerful approach that you took to highlighting the immense need of the hour.
It was in the midst of the 12-day war. We didn't know it was only going to be 12 days. We wondered and prayed it wouldn't be much longer than that, because nobody was getting any sleep over here. We were heading to the shelters 5 times a night. It was intense and challenging. And I knew that President Trump would have a very difficult decision to make. Would the U.S. engage in this? Would he feel it was necessary and in the U.S. best interest? And I knew that he wouldn't do it if he didn't feel that it was in the U.S. best interest, because he's the American president. That's his job. He's been very clear, America first. It's the right message. But America first never has meant America only. It also means when we have an ally, when we have, in this case, a partner who's in trouble, you don't let them twist in the wind. And so I knew that that decision was one that was going to be incredibly consequential. And I also knew that there were a lot of voices surrounding the president telling him, do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it. Like 2 people on his shoulder, you know, whispering in his ear. I wasn't going to try to tell him whether he should or shouldn't, because it wasn't my place to do that. And I was very adamant about that. I wanted him to know that the decision that he made, I believe, was a decision for which the wisdom of that decision would come not from around him, but above him. And I didn't think that much about it at the time. It was a personal message to him. And I texted it to him, thinking, well, usually I hear back from him and we communicate. I didn't know how he would receive it. It was 2 a.m. in D.C. Within 10 minutes, I got his response, which I was a little startled, because I was thinking, what's he doing up at 2 a.m? Yeah. Although he's often up at 2 a.m. And he said something to the effect of, I appreciate your message. I've read it over and over, and it really means a lot. Again, I thought, well, that was very kind. Glad he read it, glad it meant something to him. And that was all for me. It probably wasn't 35 minutes, an hour later, I suddenly started getting hits on every form of messaging I get, from WhatsApp to text to email, Signal. Everything I have started filling up my box with people all over the world, you know, telling me, I just read what you sent to the president. I'm thinking, how did you read it? I didn't send it to you. And then I saw on Truth Social that he had posted the entire thing. Yeah. And obviously I would never have disclosed that. It was just a private communication. I would never have, because it wouldn't have been appropriate. But when he did it, I thought, well, I guess it really did mean something to him. I was glad that it spoke to him. I was not trying to give him advice, because he doesn't need it. I was just saying, you'll hear a voice, it'll be clear, and you'll make the right decision. And I believe he did make the right decision.
To what degree do you believe that this ongoing conflict is really indicative of a greater spiritual conflict?
I think the heart, soul, essence of the conflict can only be viewed in the spiritual. Yes, there's a geopolitical reality to it, and nobody can deny that, and that's a big, big part of what we see. But it's the unseen. It is the fact that this is a conflict that at its heart is a spiritual conflict. I like to put it this way, it's not horizontal. Everyone in politics sees things horizontally, left, right, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. In the case of Israel, maybe it's government, opposition, you know, everything's on the horizontal plane. How far to the left from center are you? How far to the right from center are you? But I view the ultimate battle here as being vertical, not horizontal. It's up and down. It's good versus evil. If anyone has ever seen the full video, the 47-minute video that was video captured by GoPro cameras right off the helmets of Hamas when they came in on October the 7th and slaughtered people, massacred them, mutilated them, humiliated them. Even if you just know what happened, you don't have to see the video. You can read the descriptions. You cannot look at that in the context of this was a military action. No, it wasn't. You can't even see it as a terrorist action. It was all of that. It was an act of unspeakable evil. When you rape a woman in front of her family, her children, that's not the work of an army or even the work of a terrorist. That's a work of a demon. That's the most, I can't even think of something more horrific than that. And then to set fire to an elderly person while they're sitting in their wheelchair in front of their family, to behead a baby in front of the mother, put a baby in the oven in the presence of the family, to inflict as much not only physical pain, but as much emotional, psychological, and spiritual pain on another human being that you can possibly come, and then to be gleeful about it. The fact that they celebrated their actions, that they called back home to their parents, and their parents celebrated what they had done, and they were proud of it, is to me something that I have no parallel in all of human history to relate to.
On the day I remember in London on Edgware Road, there were people dancing in the streets, giving out sweets, baklava, and all of this, chanting, rejoicing in something that was of the level of wicked that you describe. In the time that's elapsed since, we've had a slurry of misinformation, deception, lies, subterfuge, and so much of the world seems to be lapping that up. As Christians, we know that we should rejoice in truth. We're to think of what is good, right, and true, and we know that we serve a God of truth. God is true. His word is truth. Tell us a little bit about the concerns over misinformation. You went to the food distribution centers recently. Tell us what's going on there at the border.
There's been so much misinformation and outright just deception and lies about what's really going on in Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which was really a U.S. initiative, we set it up. It was done because President Trump said, I want humanitarian aid to get into Gaza to deal with the hungry people who are civilians, but I don't want it distributed in a way that Hamas can steal it, because Hamas has been stealing most of the food that's going in. By the UN's own numbers, this is not something I've just come up with or something that Israel gave me. The UN reports that 87% of the food that they send in is looted or stolen. We know that last year Hamas made over $500 million. That's $500 million selling stolen food. So the GHF was designed so that we distribute boxes of food for a family of 5 that will last them 8 to 10 days. It's difficult for Hamas to steal it. I can't say that Hamas doesn't send some of their people in and get a box of food, but they can't get enough to make it worth it or try to resell it. So this is a family coming to get their food, or it's maybe the head of a family or a young teenager getting it for his family. We don't necessarily have the ability to track exactly where every morsel goes, but it's commodities that people can use, and it's working. It's working efficiently and safely. The UN system has been a total disaster. Not only has 87% of the food been stolen, but there's been, Israel alone, just Israel, has sent 2 million tons of food into Gaza. And I love to ask reporters, how many countries in the history of the world have fed their enemies while the war is still going on?
Yeah.
How many of them have been expected to feed their enemies? I dealt with a reporter from Great Britain recently, and she was pressing about Israel's responsibility to, feed Gaza. And I think, wait a minute, let me see if I understand. You're from Britain. In World War II, did anyone expect Britain to drop food into Germany to feed the Nazis while they were trying to blow them to smithereens? No, I'll tell you what the Brits did. They dropped so many bombs on Dresden, they pretty well wiped out the place and killed 25,000 civilians. I don't remember the same outcry from your country saying that Winston Churchill is a war criminal. This is such a ridiculous thing, particularly the angst and hostility that's being inflicted toward Israel as a whole and toward the Prime Minister and the government in particular. They're trying to free hostages, 50 of whom, as we speak, are still there. They're trying to bring them home, both living and deceased. They're trying to destroy Hamas, end their reign of terror. When I was in Gaza, the two things that for me were the big takeaways. The first was that GHF is actually working. It is a model that should be the model to do. The second thing was talking to the Gazans, the people who have lived there. They love the U.S. They don't hate Israel or the IDF, as many people would think, but they do hate Hamas. And they want no part of Hamas in their future, none. Nor do they want the PA, PLO, or Fatah. They want a different future that does not include Hamas and the people who have supported them. Those were pretty stunning things to hear.
It goes against the grain commonly of what people present and what people hear, and we're very grateful for your firsthand perspective on that. We are seeing a plan for Israel to temporarily take over Gaza that's been approved now. Tell us, do you have any insight on how that might go about? How long would you foresee this process potentially extending to? Is it feasible to expect the hostages who remain alive to be saved?
We certainly hope so. There's a risk. Let's be very honest. There's a risk. But there's also a risk in letting this just indefinitely go on. Anyone who saw the videos of the hostages and saw the condition they were in, talking about people who are hungry, they've obviously not been fed. They're starving. I mean, they are starving. And one of them was forced to be digging his own grave. What does that tell us? Their future is not good as long as Hamas is controlling it. Israel does, in fact, run a huge risk by taking the military action that they've planned in order to end Hamas and save hostages. But what choice do they have? They could surrender to Hamas. They could just say, we'll make a deal. And they could leave Hamas in power, even leave Hamas there. President Trump has said Hamas cannot stay, even though it's not our decision. But the United States, through our president, has weighed in and said they can't stay, they can't govern. And I believe that's the right call, in the same way that no one would have said the Nazis can stay in Germany after World War II and have a piece of the parliament. Who would have thought that that was reasonable? There's no beautiful outcome here because it was launched out of hate and a level of evil that is just unprecedented. But ultimately, Israel doesn't have a choice but to end this suffering for Hamas. And I'll tell you who will be as happy as anyone for that to happen will be the people of Gaza. They will not mourn the demise of Hamas.
People like to talk about the plight of Christians in the Middle East, and of course across the Middle East we see Christians are severely persecuted. But there are some low-grade commentators out there, the Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson's of the group leading the pack as such, saying that Israel is systematically destroying Christianity, not only in Israel but in the Middle East. How would you respond to that claim?
That is a blatant lie. It is unfounded. It is made either out of ignorance or out of contempt for the truth, but it is totally not based on fact. I live here, but I've been coming here far more than either one of them or any of the other on the fringe who have taken up this view that Israel is evil and they're responsible for every bad thing going on. Israel is actually very accommodating to Christians. Now, Israel is a Jewish state, so we respect that. There are times, we had a recent issue with visas for Christians who work in Israel, teach in institutions here. But when I brought it to the attention of the Israeli government, and when it was a bureaucratic issue, it was not an ideological, at least I don't believe that it was someone who says, we hate Christians. If it was manifest in a bureaucratic kerfuffle. But when I brought it to the attention of the government, within 24 hours, it was resolved. I'm not seeing this. There are ongoing issues. One is taxation of churches, but that's a municipal issue with some churches. We're working on that. I'm just saying that it's ludicrous to say that Israel is against Christians. In fact, the state of Israel protects access to Christian sites that are holy to us as much as they do to sites that are holy to Jews. And also, a little known fact, they protect sites that are holy to Muslims as well. And it's something they don't get credit for, but they should.
Ambassador Huckabee, thank you so much for taking this time and for sharing with our viewers. And thank you to our viewers at Revelation TV. You're a blessing. Continue to pray for Ambassador Huckabee and, of course, for this partnership, is the term that you used, between the United States and Israel to continue to grow. And we can, of course, continue to pray as well for our own nation in the United Kingdom, that it would rediscover its love as well for this beautiful place. God bless and keep you.